how the US dollar became the most powerful currency, and what could finally break it. The dollar didn't become powerful by accident. It became powerful because the world needed a currency strong enough to hold everything together. But every empire has a breaking point, and the dollar is no exception. Welcome to Wheelixen, where every story reveals how money, power, and history shape the world we live in. Here, we uncover the patterns behind inflation, crashes, empires, and the lessons they left behind. Chapter 1. The Rise of the Dollar began with a global collapse. The US dollar didn't rise during peace, stability, or prosperity. It rose because the world was falling apart. Before the dollar dominated global trade, global finance ran on the British pound. For nearly a century, Britain's currency was the backbone of international banking. It was backed by the world's largest empire, the world's largest navy, and the world's deepest financial markets. But then came two world wars. Europe was devastated, cities collapsed, banks failed, gold reserves evaporated. The British Empire lost its economic strength, its global influence, and its financial reliability. By 1944, as World War II approached its end, the world needed a new anchor, a currency strong enough to stabilize global trade and rebuild broken economies. Only one nation had the power, the United States. America emerged from the war with the world's largest gold reserves, the world's strongest industrial base, the only intact major economy, and the military might to enforce global order. The world was collapsing. The dollar was rising, and this meeting point created modern financial history. Chapter 2. Bretton Woods, the blueprint for dollar dominance. In 1944, 44 nations gathered in a small town in New Hampshire to redesign the global financial system. The agreement they created, the Bretton Woods system, was the moment the dollar became the center of global money. Here's how it worked. All major currencies were linked to the dollar, and the dollar was linked to gold at $35 per ounce. This gave the world something it desperately needed, a trusted currency with a stable value. From that day, international trade, bank reserves, global loans, and commodity prices all began flowing through the US dollar. The world didn't just use the dollar, it depended on it. America became the lender, the banker, the stabilizer, and eventually the enforcer of the global financial system. But there was a problem waiting to happen. Chapter 3. The Promise. America couldn't keep. The Bretton Woods system required the U.S. to maintain a strict rule. Anyone holding dollars could exchange them for gold, but by the 1960s, the system began to strain. America was spending more money than ever before. The Vietnam War, the Cold War, social welfare programs. Global military expansion countries around the world began noticing that the U.S. was printing more dollars than it had gold to back. Foreign governments, especially France, started demanding physical gold in exchange for their dollars. Gold reserves began to drain, confidence began to crack. The system was approaching collapse. So in 1971, President Richard Nixon made a decision that shocked the world. He closed the gold window. The dollar would no longer be convertible into gold. This moment, known as the Nixon shock, ended the Bretton Woods system forever. The dollar was no longer as good as gold. It became pure fiat money, a currency backed not by metal but by trust and American power. But instead of collapsing, something unexpected happened. The dollar became even more powerful, because now America didn't just control the currency, it controlled the rules of the system. Chapter 4. The Petrodollar. America's genius move. After the gold standard collapsed, the world needed a new reason to trust the dollar. America found one. In the 1970s, the U.S. struck a groundbreaking deal with Saudi Arabia. Saudi oil would be priced only in U.S. dollars. Every oil-producing nation soon followed. This created the petrodollar system, a financial structure that forced every country in the world to hold dollars if they wanted to buy oil. Oil wasn't just energy. It was the lifeblood of every economy. Factories ran on it. Transportation depended on it. War machines required it. And if oil required dollars, the world required dollars too. This move did something extraordinary. It made the dollar unavoidable. Even after losing gold, the dollar gained something even more powerful: global necessity. America created demand for its currency not through precious metals, but through the most essential commodity on earth. This was not luck. This was strategy. Chapter 5. U.S. Treasury bonds, the safest asset in human history. The next pillar of dollar dominance came from a different direction: the U.S. bond market. When a country buys U.S. Treasury bonds, it is essentially lending money to the United States government. These bonds became the financial bedrock of the modern world because the U.S. has never defaulted. American markets are deep and liquid. America's economy is massive, diverse, and stable. Treasuries can be instantly traded anywhere in the world. Countries like China and Japan hold trillions in U.S. debt because they trust America to always honor its obligations. Global banks use treasuries as collateral. Pension funds use them for stability. Central banks use them to back their currencies. Treasuries became the backbone of global finance, and that gave America an exceptional privilege. The United States could borrow more money than any country in history, and the world would still beg for more. This exorbitant privilege, as the French called it, allowed America to run deficits without facing collapse. The world trusted the dollar because the world needed the dollar. Chapter 6. The dollar dominates. Because no rival can replace it. To understand why the dollar remains powerful, you only need to ask one question. What's the alternative? The euro, a good currency. But the European Union is politically fractured. The Chinese yuan, not fully convertible, not transparent, not trusted globally. Gold, powerful store of value, but impractical for global trade. Cryptocurrency, innovative, but volatile. No rival comes close to offering what the dollar offers. Stability, liquidity, global acceptance, rule of law, massive financial markets, military protection, centuries of geopolitical influence. The dollar wins not because it is perfect, but because everything else is worse. America doesn't just issue a currency, it issues the operating system of the world economy. And changing an entire operating system is not easy. But that brings us to the final question. If the dollar is so strong, what could actually break it? Chapter 7. What could actually break the dollar? The US dollar is the most powerful currency in history. It survived the end of the gold standard, oil shocks, financial crises, political chaos, and global wars. But even the strongest systems have pressure points, places where stress can turn into failure. So what could actually weaken the dollar's dominance? The answer isn't one event, but three major forces that could shift global trust. Let's break them down clearly. 1. A loss of confidence in America. S. Ability to manage. Its own debt, the dollar is powerful because people believe the U.S. government will always honor its promises. But America's debt keeps growing. Trillion-dollar deficits aren't shocking anymore, they're normal. If the world begins to doubt America's discipline, its political stability, or its ability to control inflation, confidence can crack. And unlike gold or oil, the dollar is built entirely on confidence. If trust slips, demand weakens. If demand weakens, the dollar begins to slide. The biggest threat isn't the debt number itself, it's the fear that America is losing control of it. 2. A major geopolitical shift. Every reserve currency in history rose with global power and fell when that power declined. Rome's currency fell with its empire. Britain's pound faded as its empire crumbled after World War II. The dollar's strength isn't just economic, it's military, diplomatic, and cultural. If the US loses influence in key regions, if alliances weaken, if rivals like China gain enough global trust, the dollar could lose some of its dominance. But here's the important part. Losing dominance doesn't mean collapse. It just means the dollar would share the stage instead of owning it. 3. A new financial system that makes the dollar less necessary. If a new system emerges, one that lets countries trade without dollars, that would reduce global demand. This could be a digital currency backed by multiple nations, a commodity-backed settlement network, a large-scale economic alliance, or a new BRICS-style payment architecture. Most of these are still early ideas. But the world is exploring alternatives because relying on a single currency also means relying on a single country. The dollar won't disappear, but its share could shrink. And in global finance, a smaller share means weaker influence. Chapter 8. The dollar's real weakness. Trust, not competition. A common misconception is that the dollar will fall because a new currency will replace it. But history shows something different. Reserve currencies don't collapse because a competitor wins. They collapse because the world loses trust in the old system. If the US loses control of inflation, if political chaos becomes permanent, if the government fails to manage long-term debt, trust begins to fade, not instantly, not dramatically, but slowly over time. It's like a small crack in a window, barely noticeable at first, but eventually it spreads. The dollar's true foundation isn't gold, oil, or military power. It's belief. Belief that America will lead, honor its obligations, and provide stability. As long as that belief holds, the dollar remains king. If that belief fades, the system begins to shift. Chapter 9. The final truth. Why the dollar still matters. Despite all the challenges, all the geopolitical drama, and all the speculation about alternatives, one truth remains: the world still needs the US dollar. For trade, for reserves, for safety, for stability, for investment, for liquidity, for crisis protection. There is no real replacement, not yet, and maybe not for a long time. The dollar might become weaker. It might share the global stage with new currencies. But losing dominance is not the same thing as dying. The dollar isn't just a piece of paper or a digital code. It is a global system woven into everything. International banking, oil and commodities, global trade routes, shipping finance, corporate debt, emerging market stability, central bank reserves, and trillions in global contracts. If the dollar shakes, the entire world feels it. That's why understanding this system isn't optional, it's essential, especially for Americans. Because when a system this big moves, it moves everyone with it. If this video helped you see the US dollar in a way the headlines never do, then you're exactly the kind of thinker this channel was made for. Here at Wheelixon, we break down the structures that quietly shape your life, from the Federal Reserve to global debt to the power networks most people never see. When you subscribe, you get clarity in a world full of confusion, and insight in a system that affects every dollar you earn, spend, and save. Stay informed, stay ahead, and stay awake to the forces shaping your future. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.